Harris, good morning to you. Well, I can tell you sources are telling Fox News this morning that President Biden is surrounded by at least a whopping 16 debate preppers at Camp David right now, and he'll stay there until he heads to Atlanta for the big debate. I can also tell you it's very common, Harris, for the president to do a mock debate. One of those staffers, one of those aides will pretend or be the challenger, former President Trump, and then the president will undergo a mock debate. Now, Biden's team knows that the 81-year-old has to perform well for 90 minutes straight, and so he will continue to prep and stay there and probably not be seen until he heads down to Atlanta. In contrast, former President Trump is on the campaign trail, holding rallies, meeting with supporters in between all of his debate prep. Last week, Trump called Biden a worthy debater, but thinks that all of this prepping that he's doing right now at Camp David is just going to wash away on that debate stage. Listen.
I think if he prepares, he'll be fine, and then he'll forget it within about an hour after preparing. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Now, all of this is happening as Texas Congressman Ronnie Jackson says he's going to send a letter here to the White House to the president requesting that he take a drug test before and after the debate. Meanwhile, the White House is getting some raised eyebrows about a recent promotion here. Tyler Cherry is his name. He now leads communications for Biden's climate policy office. Cherry is addressing some controversial past tweets he made, including saying that the police are the, quote, direct evolution of slave patrols and lynch mobs. In an effort to clean that up, Harris, he just posted this. He says, past social media posts from when I was younger do not reflect my current views, period. I support this administration's agenda and will continue my communications work focused on our climate and environmental policies. Not the kind of story that the White House wants to see out there in the public media right before a big moment for the president. But the White House spokesman tells us that they are proud to have Tyler Cherry on their team. All eyes now on these two contenders as we await this big debate. Harris?
Aisha, I'm sure you caught it. So that tweet was from 19 hours or so ago. And you know that people were sending out all of his old tweets. So if he had hoped to get out in front of the truck that's coming toward him, he was already too late 19 hours ago. We will see how this, I don't know if one tweet says I didn't mean what I said on all the last ones actually gets it done. But we'll cover it. Thank you. Doug Collins, former Republican congressman of Georgia. Patrick Murphy, former Democratic congressman of Pennsylvania. Look, cleanup on aisle 7 is something, unfortunately, that politicians have to do. And even presidents have had to do it. Why would you pull somebody on your team that already is a train wreck on social media in terms of having to clean up after him unless you're desperate? What does this get the Democratic Party and the White House, Patrick?
Harris, it doesn't get a lot. And we are 3 days away from an epic rematch in this debate. And it's not about Tyler Cherry and it's not about Ronnie Jackson. It's about Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And it's going to be a debate of contrast, especially today, Harris, when we're 2 years from the disastrous Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade. Do you know 1/3 of American women now don't have access to reproductive freedom? So that's going to be the debate
You're going away
Thursday.
From the question about why they would hire this guy. So let me give you some more examples. A tiny sample of the flood of criticism of Tyler Cherry by social media users. Here are some of them, Doug. Let me guess. Cheap fakes, a reference to the White House characterization of recent videos of President Biden. Because this is in response to that tweet that Aisha Hasni just showed us, which I pointed out came out some 19 hours ago saying, hey, don't pay attention to what the younger me posted. Okay, I don't know if that includes like recent younger him. Or do we know it's all the same person? Another, too late to backpedal, Tyler Cherry. You're exposed as a horrible human being. And one more, would you accept that explanation for far-right posts? Doug.
Yeah, the last one probably is the more applicable one. No, they would not accept it for anything like that. And look, this, I mean, how much? And I think both Patrick and I understand that this was a bad, I mean, the optics of this are terrible. I mean, and it's really, but it's also a continuation of this White House and especially the communications department. This has been something we've seen for a long time. They know what the social media posts were before they hired him. They know what he had out there, and they hired him anyway. That's just, to me, is a continuation of pandering to the left on these kind of hires, and they don't really care until it gets them in trouble. Then they try to back out of it. Yeah. And, you know, that's not that much younger ago when you look at when these tweets were made and you come across this, because this is not, ooh, I was, you know, another lifetime. This was pretty recent. So I mean, look, in a week in which there is monumental things going on, this is one in which the Biden administration has had so much trouble with communication with basically Americans, to now have to deal with this on debate week. Again, this is self-inflicted wound here.
Yeah, and again, I just ask what they're grasping for, because if it's young voters, this is insulting. Because young people can tell the difference between what they see and can read and what's in their own social media feeds and what this guy now wants to separate himself from. I mean, he can't completely become another person. That's not how this works. But it's interesting that they would mire themselves down with cleanup on aisle 7 while the president is, sequestered, getting ready for a debate. Talk about a distraction. All right, voters that President Biden and the Democratic Party thought were locked up for them are no longer a safe bet. Recent Fox polling shows fewer than half of Hispanic voters approve of the job that Joe Biden is doing. An opinion piece in the Los Angeles Times is arguing Democrats grew too reliant on a demographic that is newer to the country and more Spanish-speaking than Latinos overall. This led a generation of political operatives to believe that the growing Latino vote would eventually turn Texas and Florida blue. Democrats also clung to the belief that Latino voters heavily identified with the immigrant experience and were best targeted through Spanish television ads. The strategy was never backed by much evidence or very effective at motivating Latino voters. Some hot takes on the former president's appeal overall. Donald Trump here.
When he does a rally, they're chanting USA, USA. These are patriots. These are people that love their country. They want hope. They want optimism about getting things turned around and bringing it back. Watch a Joe Biden rally. Is anyone chanting USA, USA? No.
Some of the brothers that we see celebrating Trump. In a lot of ways, Donald Trump is, I should say for a lot of people, Donald Trump is the most crystal clear example of the American dream. He is somebody who says whatever he wants, and he's only stronger because of it.
And imagine that. He's still got a gag order on him. And some voters are seeing this president as someone who can say whatever he wants. That's part of the American dream. You heard from that young man. You can talk to many voters. We do. And this is what our Fox News polling is showing. 73% support for Biden among black voters. That's a steep drop from 2020 when he won 91% of the black vote. What happened? And this isn't good news for the president when it comes to young voters. 60% say they disapprove of his job performance. Wow. When you look at this, Doug, I want to go to you first, just to talk about what happened. What is the erosion point that you see in the last 3+ years?
Well, I think what you're seeing is the difference between a administration that seems to be caring about everything else except that, base. When you see it, I asked some pollsters about this because at first when I saw the polls coming out of New York, I saw this number, I was questioning it. I'm saying something may not be right. Demographics is, crosstabs. But when I started talking to pollsters, what they were seeing is when you dug into it deeper, is issues like immigration, crime in the cities, things that have been moved from the border to, really mainstream America. They're starting to see that folks who are coming here doing it the wrong way, illegally coming here. We see the crime with some of the murders and stuff we saw here in Georgia and other places. They're saying, look, we're Americans. We've been here and we did it the right way. And now we're seeing this come to our front doorstep and they're getting treated differently than we are. I think that's the big difference.
It's not clear where those voters will go. It doesn't automatically mean that black and Latino voters who are just completely disenchanted by Biden are going to vote for Donald Trump. But what it potentially could mean is they'll think about it. Some of them will do the one thing that we never want to see happen in America. They'll just sit. They won't even exercise their right to vote. And that means Biden broke something in this country. And if he doesn't just fix it for himself, Patrick, he's got to fix it for everybody else. You can't leave it such that young people are outside the process because of your bad policies.
Harris, I absolutely agree with you, and I agree with Doug. The reality of it is, though, the American people have been put through the ringer. I mean, it was the worst global pandemic. But let's move on from that. Let's say, what are we doing to move it forward?
But the high inflation has been more recent than the pandemic. Give people some credit.
But
they made it through, particularly those people who got very ill and struggled and survived. God bless them.
But inflation happened
and now
all over
they're
the
going to
world.
vote based on how they are experiencing a current presidency. Give them some credit.
Right, and I am giving him credit, and they also give President Biden credit because inflation was at 9%, it's down to 3%, and we got a lot of work to do. But people
you
are
realize he inherited 1.4, and we didn't have a pandemic in the middle of that because by May 11th in that first year, the president had told us that the pandemic was over.
Yeah, and he also had 16% unemployment rate in Black America, Harris, and now it's down less than 5%. That's what Joe Biden's record is. I mean, the ball is moving forward in a positive direction. Now, again, I know we could debate this, but you can't debate the fact that Joe Biden, when it talks about the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the CHIPS Act, the PACT Act for our veterans, he has delivered for the American people. And it's setting in now in economic policy. And that's why the economy is growing, which is the envy of the world. It is.
Yeah, the sad part about that is, Patrick, is none of what you just named has actually been done. The Build Back Better has not been built, and it's not better. The CHIPS Act is still coming along.
That's
It's just
not
not been
true.
done.
Okay, let Doug get his words out.
Done.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you. I'm going to bring you back as soon as we possibly can on a different day. Great debate. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.